let's face it, diving into the world of FinOps tools, it's almost like stepping into a jungle, isn't it? Everywhere you turn, there's like a new, shiny tool. And
Yeah.
it's promising the world, promising to solve all your cloud cost problems.
It's easy to get lost, for sure.
Exactly. So today, on our deep dive, we're going to equip you with basically a compass and a machete
I like that.
to navigate this jungle, right? And our trusty guidebook for this trek is going to be the FinOps Foundation's own framework document.
That's a good one. What I find really interesting is their focus on strategy. It's not about just, collecting every single tool under the sun. It's about choosing the right tools. And, importantly, they actually give you a roadmap to get there.
See, now this is what I love. It's so easy to get caught up in like the must-have tech jargon, but SARP, that's something you can actually, put to use. So walk us through it. What are the key landmarks on this FinOps tool journey that they lay out?
They've got this crawl, walk, run model.
Mm.
Because let's face it, not everyone's at the same stage of FinOps maturity.
Okay, I love that. It's like leveling up in a game, right? Makes the whole thing way less intimidating. So let's start with crawling. In the world of FinOps tools, what does that actually look like?
So crawling is all about just getting that baseline visibility into how much you're actually spending on the cloud.
Yeah.
Think of it literally as mapping out the terrain.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You're probably relying on, at this point, some pretty basic reporting tools.
Yeah.
The stuff your cloud vendor gives you.
Right.
Maybe even, I hate to say it, but maybe even some manual tracking in spreadsheets.
Oh, no.
It happens. It's really just about those first steps, getting a handle on where you are right now.
Gotcha. So no fancy dashboards or AI-powered predictions just yet. More okay, what does my spending actually look like right now?
Exactly.
So can you give me an example? What's a tool that someone in this crawling phase, they might actually already be using?
Oh, yeah, the AWS Cost Explorer. It's a classic.
Oh.
It's right there. It's built in. Gives you a good breakdown of your costs. And you can start to see some areas where you might be able to, optimize a little bit.
Perfect. That's super practical for our listeners who are just, dipping their toes into the FinOps waters. Now, let's say you've gotten a hold of your spending, you're comfortable with the basics. What does walking look like in this journey?
So walking is you've got that basic visibility. You're ready to start being a little bit more proactive, right?
Yeah.
Think about things like automated reporting, setting up some budgets, maybe even some alerts so you're not caught off guard.
Right.
Maybe even starting to do some right sizing on your resources.
Okay.
And this is where you'll probably start looking at some more specialized tools.
Okay, so if crawling was understanding your current state, walking is about taking action, right?
Exactly.
And that's where these more specialized tools come into play. This is where things start to get interesting for a lot of people, I imagine. What kind of tools are we talking about here?
Yeah, you hit your stride here.
Yeah.
A good example would be a cloud cost management platform.
Okay.
Something like Cloudability or Apptio Cloudability.
Okay.
These platforms, they pull in data from all your different cloud providers. So you've got that one central view. They can do your automated reporting. Some even have right-sizing recommendations.
Okay, so we've gone from spreadsheets to dedicated platforms.
Exactly.
Which makes sense as you're dealing with more, complex cloud environments. But you mentioned right sizing, and that in itself, that's a whole other thing.
It is.
For our listeners who are newer to this, can you give a quick breakdown? What does right sizing actually mean, and why is it so important at this walking stage?
Yeah, for sure. Right sizing is making sure that your cloud resources are, the right size for what you're using them for. It's all about finding and eliminating waste. So maybe that means completely shutting down something you're not using at all. Or maybe it means downsizing it to a cheaper option. Let's say you've got this server and you provisioned it for, peak load, but it turns out it's sitting idle most of the time.
Right.
Right sizing would be okay, let's downsize that to a smaller instance type, or even let's just schedule it to be shut off completely during off-peak hours.
Makes sense.
And that can save you a ton of money.
See, this is what I love about this crawl, walk, run. It takes these concepts that sound really complex and just breaks them down into manageable steps. It's not about doing everything at once. It's about building on each stage. So we've crawled, we've walked, we're starting to hit our stride with right sizing. What's it look like when you're really in the groove, hitting your FinOps stride in that running phase?
Running that's where it gets truly strategic.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just reacting to costs anymore. You're way ahead of them. We're talking automated workflows. You're using the really advanced tools, predictive analytics, all that good stuff. and you're able to actually make cost optimization decisions in real time.
Okay, now we're talking. Predictive analytics, real-time optimization, that sounds honestly a little futuristic.
Yeah.
For someone listening who's thinking like, okay, that's cool, but what does that actually look like on the ground? Can you give us a concrete example?
Okay, imagine this. Your tool spots, like an anomaly in your cloud spend. Like let's say suddenly there's this weird spike in usage for a specific service.
Right.
Now, instead of waiting until like the end of the month when the bill comes and then having to scramble, like what happened? Your system, it automatically flags it for you.
Oh,
It
wow.
tells you what might have caused it and even suggests what you could do about it based on, rules you've already set. Maybe it's like, hey, move some stuff to a different region with lower costs during off-peak hours, or tweak those auto-scaling settings because your demand is all over the place right now.
Whoa, it's like having a dedicated FinOps expert just like watching over your shoulder 24/7, except it's all automated.
Exactly. That's the goal.
But you just touched on something really important. It's not just about the tech itself, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned predefined policies, these rules you set up. And this goes back to, I think, a really key takeaway from the FinOps Foundation's guidance. It's the human element. They make it very clear. Tool selection should not be a solo mission.
100%. And this is where I see a lot of organizations trip up. They try to choose and implement tools in a silo, and it never works out well. You end up with friction, wasted resources, nobody's happy. The foundation really stresses involving everyone who's going to be impacted, Your FinOps practitioners, of course, but also engineering, finance, even procurement should have a seat at the table.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you need everyone bought in if you want these tools to actually be effective. But I'm particularly intrigued by this procurement piece. What's their role in this whole thing? Because it doesn't seem that obvious at first glance.
It's more important than people realize. Procurement, they're the ones negotiating contracts with the cloud vendors.
Right.
They're making sure you're getting the best deals. They're managing those software licenses for all these tools you're using.
Right.
Getting them involved early on can mean serious cost savings, and trust me, it'll save you a lot of headaches down the road.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't want to end up with this amazing tool, but then you're locked into this contract that just, like, doesn't work for your budget at all.
Exactly.
Like going to a fancy restaurant and then getting hit with all these, like, hidden fees on the bill.
The worst. Plus, procurement, they often have this deep knowledge of the vendor landscape.
Right.
They know the ins and outs of contract negotiations. They can be such a valuable asset, truly an ally in your FinOps journey.
This is a great reminder that FinOps isn't an IT thing. It's a whole company effort. And clearly having all these different voices at the table makes a huge difference. Speaking of making a difference, though, one thing that I think sometimes gets lost in all this excitement about new tools is, like, how do we actually measure their impact? It's so easy to get caught up in the, ooh, look, shiny dashboards, look at all these features. But at the end of the day, we've got to be able to show that these FinOps tools are actually making a difference for the business.
Right. It's got to go beyond the look what we can do to the look what we accomplished. The FinOps Foundation, they're big on this. You have to measure success in a way that actually aligns with, what the business cares about, the big picture. And that's where, of course, our good friend KPI comes in.
KPIs. Everyone loves a good KPI.
Yeah.
But seriously, beyond that initial excitement of, ooh, cool graphs, how do we figure out if our FinOps tools are actually delivering, real value? What are some KPIs that we should be keeping an eye on?
It can't just be vanity metrics.
Yeah.
Right? It's about making that connection between, hey, we're using this tool, and here's a tangible outcome. Think about it like this. What's the reduction in your cloud spend that's just wasted? Or how much faster can you get those new products and features out there, time to market? Are you getting better at predicting your cloud costs? Those are the questions that leadership, they perk up their ears when they hear that, because it's about that ROI. It's about that business impact.
It makes total sense. You've got to speak their language, the language of business impact, not just get lost in the technical weeds. I remember actually, I was working on this project once. We were implementing this new tool. It was supposed to optimize our cloud storage costs. And we were so focused on like all the technical details. How do we get it set up? How does it work? All of that. We totally forgot to track how this was actually going to save the company money. So when it came time to show off all our amazing work, we had all this data about storage optimization, but nothing, and I mean nothing, to show for the actual financial impact.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was a tough lesson learned.
You got to connect those dots for sure.
For sure.
Speaking of choosing the right tools, the FinOps Foundation, they talk about this dilemma that I know a lot of organizations face. Build versus buy.
The eternal struggle.
Right. When do you roll up your sleeves and build your own thing versus going with something that's already out there in the market? Because, let's be real, there is no shortage of FinOps software these days.
It seems like there's a new one every day.
Yeah.
So when does it make sense to actually build your own tools instead of just going with what's already out there?
Sometimes those ready-made solutions, they just don't quite fit, right? Maybe you've got a really unique way of doing things, your workflows, or you've got these specific data integration needs or compliance hoops you've got to jump through.
Right, right.
And if that's the case, sometimes building your own tools, it's really the best way to go.
So it's about finding that balance, right? Customization versus let's just get this done.
Yeah.
But I imagine building your own tools comes with, its own challenges. It's not as simple as just having a team of developers ready to code, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Building your own tools, it's a big decision. You've got to think about the development time. How much is it going to cost to maintain this thing in the long run? And are you even reinventing the wheel? Maybe there's something already out there that you could use. The FinOps Foundation, they're all about that balanced approach. Evaluate your needs really carefully. How complex is this problem you're trying to solve? Do you have the expertise in-house to actually build this thing? And what's it going to cost in the long run to build it versus just buying something that's already out there?
It's about making that strategic decision, not just doing it because, oh, it'll be cool to say we built our own tools in-house.
Exactly. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, bringing in all the key players. That build versus buy decision, it shouldn't be made in a vacuum. You need your FinOps practitioners, your engineers, finance, even procurement, everyone weighing in to make sure you're making the smartest choice for your organization.
This has been awesome. This deep dive into the FinOps Foundation's framework, it's been eye-opening. We've covered so much ground. Choosing the right tools based on your maturity level, how to actually measure success, the importance of getting everyone on board, that human element, and even like tackling that age-old build versus buy dilemma.
It's been fun. It's a great framework, really practical advice that any organization can use, no matter where you're at in your FinOps journey. Just remember, it's a starting point. Take what works for you, adapt it, make it your own.
So for our listeners, as you're heading out on your own FinOps tool adventures, here's a little something to think about. How can you be a champion for actually using these tools effectively in your organization? What steps can you take no matter where you are on that journey? Until next time, happy optimizing.